If there is one thing that we all agree upon, it is that we are a work in progress. It means that you are never complete, and you always have the opportunity to become something and someone better.
Indeed, it allows you the opportunity to be comfortable with making mistakes and accepting yourself for who you are.
And we are a work in progress. I am GW.
I'm AX.
And I am GK. Welcome to the show.
We have someone new.
Yeah, we got someone new, cladded
you.
with the waistcoat, really good. That tie looks very fresh.
Yes.
I hope you've come with that fresh attitude for
fresh
work in
attitude,
progress.
fresh mind, fresh ideas.
This is the man of Chairman's Corner.
Yes.
For all of those of you who would be interested in watching it. So, GW, there's something interesting that's happened over the last couple of days, and that is October 24th. What does that mean to you?
I think it's someone's birthday.
No, maybe.
No, it's someone's birthday.
Certainly.
Yeah, I believe it's the UN's birthday anniversary.
Yeah.
It's the UN's anniversary.
Yeah.
So we thought it fit to ask ourselves questions that you will lead as the legal expert
Wow.
and discuss around the UN and other things
Related. Yeah.
So, what are your questions, sir?
I won't start with a few questions, but I'll more start with an idea.
Okay.
We all know what the UN is, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes, United Nations.
And when it was founded, it came at a time when the world was more or less in the pits, and it was founded to, bring unity and discourse amongst, the different nations in the world. So I would ask you, if you were to found your own UN, so to speak, what would be your main, let's call them 3 values that you'd instill?
Okay.
Yeah.
Value number 1, I would disband it.
That's not a value.
I'm trying to think of the 3 things worth the UN that would make it. I think humanitarian aid, that's one. I would make a global world police that can actually enforce things. That's number 2.
Okay.
And number 3, refer to number 1 and number 2.
Okay. How about you, X?
Okay, my values would be one of equity and equality. That's a shared value. I think definite working together to achieve peace and solve world issues in a diplomatic way. And something about giving the UN more enforcement powers, but not a global police. That will definitely.
No, we need a global
police.
police.
It'll be used against leftists. I know that for sure.
That's okay.
Okay. Then I'll now take it back. Did you ever do Model United Nations? Like when you were in high school?
You would have.
Now, okay, this is I don't know if it's a nice story or a sad story. In my Model United Nations application form, they did accept me, but they accepted me as something called a secretary.
So that's that like Security Council?
No, nothing to do with Security Council. You are literally the secretary and the security of the Model United Nations.
Oh wow!
So when people are sitting and arguing and debating, you're on the roads,
order.
Telling people order, sit in your seats. I was given a whole interview on Kenyan-related items and all those things, and they were like, you know what, GK, you've done such a great job. You'll be head secretary. But it's okay. We move forward.
X?
I forgot the question.
Did you ever do MUN?
Yeah, I did. I represented Zimbabwe.
Fantastic.
For a while.
And anyway, my point to bring that back was when I first did it, I think the country represented was Gabon or something.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And of course, it was like my first few times getting at it. Like, come on, why Gabon? I wanted to be like UK.
Yeah,
or like
power.
Wanted to be on the Security Council.
Yes.
And
yes.
And I realized then I of course had good ideas, great ideas for my resolutions. I was good at opening panels and all this.
Yeah.
But I realized my worldview then, as much as it was, let's call it golden or like a bubble. When I look at the world now and like the responsibility that an institution like the UN has, it's completely different. Then I used to really believe it's a place where people could come together and actually bring ideas. But growing up, it has become more tainted, with lack of a better word.
Yes.
And I just want to know what your opinion is of that.
The worst thing that can happen to someone who's in a bubble is for someone to bust it. And unfortunately, your bubble was bust. Mine was bust a long time ago because as you do studies in international relations and history, you realize that from the beginning, the UN was bound to fail. it was bound to fail from the beginning. Now, it was started in 1945. It had worked for a long time. Before the UN, there was something called the
League of
Nations that
Yes.
came from the 14-point of Woodrow Wilson. I was going to get it.
Were you?
You move on to now this period where you had the Atlantic Charter signed by de Roosevelt and Winston Churchill, which was like a secret charter that led to the creation of the UN and the 53 countries that signed upon it when it came. And yeah, that was all such a fairy tale. But there's certain questions that you must ask. How does a body not have any enforcement parameters upon the most powerful? That's the question I have. So you have the United Nations Security Council, which is one of the 6 organs of the UN.
Yeah.
Each of those United Nations Security Council, excluding the non-permanent members, which means, like for example, Kenya just got inducted into the United Nations Security Council, and I believe President Kenyatta is the head, the rotating head at the point.
At the point.
But Kenya wouldn't get a vote or a sign of veto. No, it is only the 5 countries that own this world. America, China, Russia, Britain,
France,
and
Japan.
No, not Japan. It's the US, the UK, France, China, and Russia.
Yeah.
Yes, those 5 countries. So
although it should change, to be honest.
for me, it can't be upheld. It makes no sense for me that it exists. So I say UN doesn't.
Like cut it all together.
Cut it all.
Shut it all down.
No. Actually, don't shut it down.
Oh, wow.
Make it what it is, a charitable organization. Because that's what it's best at doing. Look at UNICEF. That's a very big success.
Yeah.
Who? The World Health
World Health
Organization.
Like who? The World Health Organization.
Oh my
and
God.
all these other institutions.
FAO.
They have been very impactful. They I'm like thumbs up. But as an international government of sorts that tells us when you've done good and when done bad, X kabisa.
Okay.
What do you think, X?
Oh, for me, it's the fact that the UN was fundamentally designed to uphold imperialism and not really give ex-colonial states the opportunity to, become independent nations. Because how can a body that was founded upon the fundamental truth that every single human being has the right of self-determination, then deny that right to billions of people around the world in 1945, and then create like a made-up...
An elitist.
Yes, like a made-up elitist, weak overseeing committee that's designed to somehow make sure that these colonies are being treated well. You're basically asking police to police themselves.
Yeah.
You're asking a kid to make sure that they don't put their hand in the cookie jar leaving the room.
Yeah.
Of course they're going to eat the cookies. What do you think was going to happen? God!
Before you continue, there's one thing the president actually said in his address when he was addressing the entire public as his first address as the head of the United Nations Security Council. He said something about inclusivity.
Yes.
He said until the United Nations is, especially the Security Council organ, because that's clearly the issue we have the most with, is more inclusive. For example, had an African country inside it
As a permanent
member making decisions for African countries, then the UN would be more useful. So he asked, is it time to rethink the United Nations, how the United Nations work? And I think, yes, it's time to rethink, disband, and reimagine. What do you think, GW?
I'm very curious that you brought that up. Is it something that he made a statement to in lines with what's happening at our borders and the whole maritime dispute?
Oh yeah.
Yes. So actually, I think the maritime dispute has fully and well and truly exposed just how foreign interests dominate international politics, often to the detriment of the states actually involved, right? Because you have essentially Kenya and Somalia arguing over a border that they did not themselves agree to. It was one that was imposed upon them. And then you have them disputing over this foreign boundary in a foreign court in front of foreign judges using foreign laws. Like at no point was any due consideration given to the particularities of the African experience. Like none at all.
And if I'm not wrong, in the whole 14 judge bench, there's like 3 Africans.
Yes.
And does it, I don't know, sit well with you that majority of the people sitting on this bench
making the decision
are not even from here? And there's something which I genuinely believe to be true, that as much as they may have the best professional, background, training, and maybe ethos, there's something about the human experience that is detached when you're not of there. And I feel like that's what's missing from all of these institutions that try to police, let's say, African relations altogether.
But I have a question. It's a cynical question to some extent.
Okay.
Is this really enforceable anyway? That's my question. Because the ICJ makes a declaration. Same with the ICC can tell Sudan to arrest Omar al-Bashir, and for 40 years Sudan doesn't give him up.
They say no.
You know, for 20
It's like,
years,
peace,
they don't
new
give
phone,
him up. Why?
this, they blue-ticked him.
Because there's no enforcement. So the question I have is there any way to really enforce these rules from the ICJ?
Do you mind if I take this?
Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Okay, I only need to say one word in order for you to know whether or not ICJ judgments are enforceable, and that is the word Israel. Like, I think in 2004, the ICJ ruled in a case that basically said that Israel, where its current boundaries are in the West Bank, that's illegal, and demanded that Israel remove all their settlers, because they're not people, they're settlers. Remove their settlers from Palestinian land and give that land back to the Palestinians. And Israel basically just said no. And then America, who supported Israel, also said no. and that's it. Israel's just been in contravention of international law for almost a decade. Almost actually coming on to 2 decades now. And nobody, everyone's just like, and
it's okay.
and it's because the ICJ has no enforcement powers. Like the UN itself has no enforcement powers.
That's
like
true.
Just as Kenya did with withdrawing its acquiescence to ICJ's jurisdiction. A lot of countries can do that as well. Like the whole spirit of the UN is entirely voluntary. Which it's good in one way, but it's also bad in
Let's all be
another.
friends.
Think about it like consent. No means no.
Okay.
You know, it's literally the president stood up and he said, at the end of the day, we are going to reject this decision. And we're going to stand firm in it. That's what you call consent. They had a mandate that I think something in 1965, and that's some reservations towards what they could allow, depending on the jurisdiction and all of these things. And that's what ICJ has just done. They've stepped further than they're meant to, and you just said no. Viva la revolution. That's what it's about.
Okay, so I think that's where we're going to pause the conversation for right now. We'll be back after the break with another segment. Welcome back to Work in Progress. So before we head into our final segment of the day, AX actually had a question that she wanted to bring out. So AX, why don't you bring that in?
Okay, so my question is, I'm assuming you guys all know that the UN was founded to enshrine and guarantee democratic principles, right? So is it possible for an institution that purports itself to be democratic to still be democratic even when it functions in undemocratic ways?
Ooh, okay, explain.
Okay, so in the UN, there's this thing called the Green Room, and it's a room where the top head honchos of the UN Security Council, the delegations from the US, UK, Russia, France, and
the Big Five.
The 5 of them and the delegations come together to actually make the decisions on various, what is the word that they use in the UN?
Resolutions.
Thank you, on various resolutions.
This is in a very informal setting.
Very informal, like imagine like, I don't know, your parents and their friends just talking about politics over drinks. Like that's exactly what it is. They then decide what's going on in that secret room, come out, and when it's time for the meeting with everyone, including the non-permanent members, the rumor is that the
agenda is already set.
The agenda is already set, decisions are already made, and the meeting with everyone else is more to humor everyone and to make them think that they're part of the process.
So it's more like, you guys get this, take this, but we're going to make the decision.
It's kind of like when your parents like give you something to play with, but it's not really the real thing.
Okay, I sort of get what you're saying, but it doesn't surprise me at all that this happens, because as we know, the decisions are made by them. We've also learned for the longest time that decisions are not made necessarily in the view of the public eye. They're made in the boardroom, they're made in the back rooms, and unfortunately for everything, and unfortunately they own everything. And it doesn't just mean that. The UN is so undemocratic. You've heard of stories of how African delegates have gone to the UN, been basically bribed, for lack of better words, to make certain resolutions.
Oh wow!
Yes.
So they'd be taken for very good drinks, put in the best hotels, given whatever they desire.
Kidogo.
And then they are told to vote with this resolution. And if they don't, that information is now used against them,
or aid is withdrawn.
It's like
it's like blackmail.
It's blackmail, exactly.
So
it's blackmail.
You saw this happening with like the Nestle baby formula thing, because like Nestle was basically pumping baby formula into the market in countries where you don't have the clean water you need to actually use the baby formula. You don't have the necessary sanitary practices to make sure the bottles are clean and that the baby's not going to get sick. And Nestle was pushing their product anyway, still knowing this. And when I think a couple of countries wanted to come forward and propose a resolution asking asking Nestle to stop. Nestle asked the US to intervene, and the US intervened and like asked those countries to back away. You see the same thing happening with tobacco in the industry in the 70s as well.
So it's the wild, wild west, and it's owned by certain warlords who control everything.
I think these warlords are, more nicely known as foreign interests.
Yes. Foreign interests.
And actually, that's where I wanted to raise my point. When you do think about interests, usually it's meant to be on a national level, especially when you have this kind of mandate. But clearly, we know individual interests take center stage.
Yes, they play a fair role.
So then, what are they to do? Are they now the ones to, be given the what do you call it, the mandate to decide, okay, let's coerce people, let's take their resources, let's cause instability, because that's clearly what they're doing. That's what we have had them or elected them to do. And put this now into our perspective here back home. We are in a position where we're meant to take charge of our position with our border. And do we put sanctions on Somalia? Do we cut off our social and cultural ties? Do we cut off our economic background? Because a lot of things that we trade with in and out of Somalia is, let's say, within Isli. It's like a dry pot. So if this thing gets messy, sticky, are we then now to have that responsibility to say, okay, let's sit in a room somewhere and cut it off?
I think that's what's bound to happen. I think one of the interesting things you have is that these people have been working together. These countries have been working together for 40 years with this crisis in the backdrop. And there's never been an extreme escalation. You have points in history where you have a little soft power used, which is negotiations, all these things. Then you have points in history where you have a little harder power used to push people forward. I think what the goal is, and what the goal of all of this is to get back to the drawing board and get back to the table. And the decision will be made from both presidents kind of said. The decision then, the final decision will be made within the context of them having one-on-one meetings and negotiating on a way forward, because it's clear that you're going to have opposing views on it. So now that we are done with the conversation with the UN, I'm just saying we're done.
We're done.
Now we'll move on to our final segment, which is Shenzi of the Week. It is called Shenzi of the Week because it is inspired by the warthog. And so in this segment, we call out members of our society who act out of or speak in a moment that in a manner that is against the contrary, or is against public order. Okay? So our Shenzi of the Week is going to be introduced this week by AX. So AX, who is our Shenzi this week?
None other than the illustrious, the notorious,
the Phantom Menace.
The Phantom Menace, Mike Sonko himself. Have you heard he killed somebody on the internet?
Whoa. Rescue team.
No. Apparently on the internet, I think he tweeted that Charles Njonjo had died. And basically Charles Njonjo's representative had to come out to be like, no, I'm still alive.
He fell victim.
I'm
not gonna call him the Shenzi. I'm gonna call Kenyans the Shenzi.
Why
I call him the
Kenyans?
victim because Kenyans have this ability. I think they want to be the first to break news. They assume this guy is 100 years old. Let's pop the news. So then it blows up. They've killed so many people over the last few years. So to me, Sonko is not the Shenzi.
It's us for
He's
believing.
the victim. It's us for
but it's one thing if you or I or GW here does it, because we're all private citizens. Sonko at one point in his life was a public officer. Like he has a huge following, has a responsibility.
Still has a huge following.
He has a responsibility to make sure that with his huge following, he's not pumping out checks.
Like verifying his information.
He needs to verify his information.
Yes.
I agree. Okay, so thank you so much for watching Work in Progress. We will be here with you next